Alright, so the next project I got going on is my 2005 Colorado. I drive this thing daily. My little gas saver. I'm going to go ahead and put some drop ball joints on the front that I got from Beltec. The ball joints are part number 2103 at 2-inch front lowered ride height. See where that puts me? I already lowered this thing once and the rear end was hitting the frame, so I'm gonna have to put a notch in the rear, but I've already cut half a coil out of the strut in the front. I know you're not supposed to do that, but it's been like that for, I don't know, 50,000 miles probably. It hasn't caused me any issues yet, so no harm, no foul, right? But it's been a reliable truck, honestly. It's let me down one time, right front wheel bearing locked up on my way home from work, but other than that though, it's been a good truck. It just needs a little love. I've neglected it for at least a year now. I put some front brakes on it and I have replaced both front wheel bearings since then, but she needs a little love. It's got a spare on the right front. I ran over a board one night coming home from work and punctured the sidewall on the tire, so I've been riding the spare up there for way too long, and there's a little spot on the frame in the back that needs patched as well, so I'm going to go ahead and knock all that out too. Once I get the ball joints in the front, I'm going to see where that puts me. I might cut another half a coil out of the front, honestly, if it doesn't put me low enough to where I like it. And after I see where the front's at, I'm going to measure for the rear, and I'll probably do like an extra big notch, which I'll probably have to go through the bed floor, but just in case I ever put it on air ride, which it probably won't, or not for a long time at least, but I don't want to be in the same situation that I am on this truck, to where I under bed notched it and now I'm gonna have to re-notch it. I don't want to be in that same boat on this one, so I'm gonna just go ahead and put the oversized notch in it now, which sucks that I have to go through the bed floor, but I'll make a little cover to cover it up so it's not just all open, you know. So go ahead and get it up on jack stands. Got the passenger side all torn apart, and I've got the upper ball joint, which I know I should replace these. I could have swore I ordered some, but I cannot find them for the life of me. The spacer that goes in there, the thick spacer goes on top, like in between the ball joint and the top of the upper control arm, and then this smaller spacer goes on the bottom, and the flat side goes to the control arm. The angled side goes like to the nut or the bolt. When you disconnect there's a little link right here with a rod with two balls on the end of it for your sway bar. And then there's a tab on the control arm from factory that you have to cut off. Yeah, moving right along, get the lower one on here and keep trucking. Okay, on the lower ball joint, it comes with this spacer to go in the middle of the lower control arm. Like where it mounts, I already have this side in there. You slide it in there so it doesn't smash this. All right, so the lower ball joint is on. The ball joint actually has a spot right here that you can put your sway bar and link into. Mine did not come out. I had to cut them out, so I'm gonna have to get some new ones, but for now I'll probably just take the sway bar off so it's not in here clunking around. But I'm gonna go ahead and cut another half coil out of the strut as well before I get it all back up in there. I'm not happy with it. All right, so on this strut, I'm a little worried about it slipping off this the plate right there. I already painted it, but I just went ahead and welded the coil to this plate, so there's no way it can snap off there, because I got into that plate a little bit right there and it was a little sketchy, but it'll be fine now. So get it back up in the truck. Both sides are done. It is extremely towed in because the other side is pretty much straight and this side's turned in, but I'll mess with that later after I get the rear done. Let's slap these wheels and tires back on and sit it on the ground and see how low she is. All right, so I got her off the jack stands. I mean, it can always be lower in my opinion, but I only got about, I would say 3 inches before it starts rubbing the inner fender well, so I'm happy with the front there. Sucks I have a spare on this side because it looks like it, but you can tell how towed in it is. I'm gonna have to get it up in the air and do the old 2x4 2 tape measure alignment, but I'll do that after I get the rear lowered, because this side's straight and that side is significantly towed in. Now that the front's done, other than the alignment, go ahead and get the rear up in the air, buzz all the bed bolts out, go ahead and get the bed off, and then I'll turn the truck around because my welder's up there. I don't have an extension cord for that unit yet for the 240 outlet, so set you on a tripod and start getting this bed off. All right, got the bed off, got her swapped around so I can reach the rear with my welder. Like I said, I don't have an extension cord. And I peeled this bed off, and I'm glad I did. That was not there last time. I'm gonna have to patch that too, man. That is terrible. Luckily I caught it before this thing freaking broke in half going down the road or something, man. Ah, it sucks. All right, so I got the debris all cleaned out of the frame. Man, this is terrible. I already swept it up. There's a big old pile of just dirt and road debris and rust that probably is why it rusted out in the first place. All these holes in the frame let stuff get in there, and it had no way to get out. But before I weld patch panels on, I'm going to spray some rust reformer inside the frame just to try to save what's there. I know there's not much there, but I don't know, peace of mind, I guess. But a little trick I learned: if you take the cap off your paint gun or your paint can, and then take the one off the WD-40, it gives you a straw to spray through. And I can stick this in these holes, like right there, and coat the inside of the frame better than you could with just the regular paint cap. And then you just put that back on your WD-40 can, spray the WD-40, and it cleans it out. Cool little trick I thought I'd mention. Get the inside of the frame coated, let it dry, and then get to making, I don't even know how many patch panels. Too many. Spraying the inside of these patch panels. This is the first one with weld-through primer, so she doesn't rust from the inside out. So I kind of forget where I left off, but I've got the driver's side all patched up, and it is not the prettiest, let me tell you. But the inside too, underneath, there's some ugly welds, but there's also some good ones. Kind of hard to weld the rusty stuff. You just kind of have to start, and sometimes there's no metal there. The top was pretty solid. Welded the sides to the top, and then just boxed it in underneath, and I can assure you it's not going to go anywhere now. There's all that stuff's 1/4 inch plate steel, much more solid than it was, I promise you. Yeah, it's not ideal, but most people would probably just scrap this truck or get a new frame for it, honestly. But I like it. Gonna try to keep it on the road for as long as I can. Like I said, try to make do with what I have. I had everything to weld it and plate it back up. Didn't have to buy any material, just making do with what I had. I did have to buy some U-bolts. I got the blocks made. They had round U-bolts on it, but I couldn't find any that were long enough, so I went with the square. And I even put a little tack on the top just to prevent them from snapping off that little plate up there, which they shouldn't, but you never know. They're kind of, you can tell they're kind of bowed because I tightened them so much. I looked for round ones, but they didn't have any round ones that were long enough, so I went with the square ones. And yeah, I made the blocks. I made the perch that the U-bolts are sitting on. Yeah, the only thing I had to buy was the U-bolts, so not very much into this, I guess you could say. The U-bolts were like 40 bucks. I thought I would also show you all this stuff that is coming out of the passenger side, which I'm getting ready to do. I've already cut all that out because all that was rusted back behind there, just like that side was. And yeah, I'm still scraping stuff out of the frame, which is absolutely ridiculous. I don't know if the camera really does it justice, but that is a lot of rusty material stuffed in the frame. I'm guessing that drain hole clogs in the frame, and then like once it gets water in the frame, it can't escape. It just sits there and rusts the frame from the inside out, which is unfortunate because I see a lot of these where it says bad frame, like on Marketplace and stuff. I got really lucky on this. I caught this pretty much just in time. I don't think this thing would have survived another winter. It probably would have broke the leaf springs off the hangers, or the hangers would have snapped off the frame. So I'm glad I caught it in time, and yeah, I'm gonna get the rest of this stuff scraped out of the passenger side and get to making patch panels for this side. So I have got the passenger side filler plates pretty much all welded in. I still have to do one across the bottom, but I ran out of welding gas, unfortunately. So I went ahead and mocked up the notches. I just leveled it across there, which is kind of a pain. I don't know why, probably because my jack stands are on wood, which isn't ideal. So I got that level. I had to use some shims under the jack stand to lift it up. On the jack stand, one notch was too much. It took me too far to one side, but I got that all sorted out. I leveled it across there, set this side to where I wanted it, and then just leveled it to the other side. You know, just had to level across there and matched it to the frame, so I know that's square. And then I also measured from the rear of the frame right here to the notch on both sides. Got that the same. Yeah, these are pretty much set. I just have to get some more welding gas and go ahead and burn these in. I figured I would mention how to measure for the size of the notch you need. You could just weld a big notch in there and then just give yourself extra room, I suppose, but then, you know, you're not utilizing the whole notch, which isn't ideal. So there is some easy calculations you can do to measure for the size of notch that you'll need. So I figured the biggest wheel I'll ever run on this, which it isn't bagged now, obviously, so it doesn't even really matter. This is just for the future. The biggest wheel I'll ever probably run is a 22-inch wheel. And a 22-inch wheel with a 30 series is roughly like 27 inches. So I gave myself an extra inch. And you divide that by 2. And then your axle size is 3 inches divided by 2. And then you add those together, gives you 15.5. And then ideally, if you're on the floor, you would measure from the bottom of the frame up 15.5 inches. We'll let you lay out on that size of the wheel. But since my truck is on the up off the floor, I just measured to the lowest point under the cab here. It's hard to do. Anyways, just measured from the ground to the bottom of the frame up here, and that's the lowest point. And then you add that to the 15.5 that you already had, and that gives you 32. From as the truck sits, the bottom right here would have to be 32 inches off the ground to lay out on a 28-inch tall tire. I actually gave myself a little extra. It's like 32.25. So yeah, once I get some more welding gas, come back out here, finish burning these in. So I set up a time lapse, but of course my phone doesn't have enough storage, so it didn't record all the way through. I think I got most of it, but these notches are welded in. Some of the welds are better than others. That one's garbage. I need to work on my vertical ups. I did learn that slowing the wire speed down a little bit helps. But those in there aren't bad. They're all welded in. Got that side welded in, don't mind that. It's gonna get cut out. Getting these top pieces, it's a little wide, so I gotta trim it down. Yeah, getting these top pieces cut to length. I'm gonna have to make a little plate right here. These weren't meant to stick up this high, the notch wasn't, so no big deal. I'll cut a little plate for that. And then once that's welded in, get those finished up, I can cut the center out. Then I will get the other piece welded up in there. This piece right here, probably gonna have to trim those a little bit too. All right, so the notches are all welded up. Underneath, backside, look at them dimes, boy. It's a lot easier when you have clean metal to weld to. A lot of this frame, when you grind it down, it still has like dirt in the pores of the metal, so it makes it hard to weld to. But I got the notch finished up. The next task is going to be this deal right here that the gas tank strap mounts to. It's got some rust on the top of it. I'm gonna make and weld on a new one of those so in the future my gas tank doesn't fall out. But in order to keep the location of that deal, I tacked a rod to the leaf spring, and then probably can't see it, but I put a mark up here where the bottom of that is. That way when I weld the new one on, all I have to do is match that mark. That nut will be in the same location as it currently is. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that old one cut off and ground down and get to making a new one. So I got the gas tank strap mount all finished up. There's a big hole right there that I had to fill in, but it's all plated underneath. So next up is gonna be rear shocks. These the shocks that were on it are pretty much rusted out. they weren't doing much. When you push them down, they're supposed to come back out, and those ones don't. So I thought I would go ahead and replace them. I have these nitro drop shocks that were on this truck before I got the QA1s on it. But I decided to go ahead and use these on this, which I can't put them in the factory location because the mounting hole is different. This one has that deal where 2 bolts run up through it. So gonna have to make a new mounting surface for it, which I got the hole drilled in the frame, so when I put the bolt in there it has a place to go. So that's gonna be basically it. I got 2 pieces of 1.25" that I'm gonna weld, around that hole, and then the shock will bolt up to that. I'm gonna obviously weld a nut in this deal. They're down here. I got them. This washer spins free of the nut, so I'm gonna go ahead and tack the nut to the washer so it doesn't spin, and then get the nut welded in there, get this welded to the frame. Bada bing, bada boom. Let's keep on moving along, baby. Shocks are on. Turned out great. Next up, I'm going to hit the whole frame, or at least like the back part, with some with a wire wheel, and then I'm going to edge prime the parts that are bare metal, and then I will hit the stock rusty part of it with rust reformer, and then paint the whole thing with black. I know I should have a respirator on, but I have this bad problem about putting something somewhere so I don't forget where it's at, and then I can't find it. So I'm gonna have to order another respirator. I don't know where it's at. I got a fan up here, a fan in the window, fan right there, and my door's open, so I'll be all right. I'm not gonna die. Got her all painted. It makes a huge difference. Actually looks like a decent little truck now. Doesn't have all that nasty brown look to it. I did realize that under there is a pretty significant place that I forgot to weld. Sucks, I'm gonna have to grind that back down, get the paint off, and weld that over there. There's also this brake bracket that I'm gonna have to weld up here to the notch somewhere. But yeah, other than that, man, I'm happy with it. I'm gonna go ahead and let it dry so I'm not bumping into it and getting paint all over me. Let it dry for a few hours, and I'll come back out here and grind those spots down, and yeah, finish weld those up, and I'll get the gas tank back in it. All right, gas tank's back up in it. I painted the straps just because they were a little rusty, and my location of the new strap mount is perfect, and I went ahead and painted both the straps. I painted the filler neck. I was going to replace this hose right there, but what I have, I don't know if it's rated for fuel or not, so I just went ahead and used that one. There ain't nothing wrong with it. It's just a little crusty, but got all that redone. It's the little things, man. Got my ground cable back on. Don't worry, it's raw metal underneath there. That was fun. I snapped off about 3 self-tappers in there, so I went ahead and put a nut stud in there. But yeah, I'm going to prime the fuel system and see if she'll fire back up. I did disconnect the ground on the battery. It's just a good idea when you're welding on the frame. fuel, which I was actually low. I didn't mess something up. I didn't take the sim unit out. I don't know why the fuel gauge would have been messed with, but I did disconnect the connectors for the sending unit, so maybe it's something in there. But I'll try adding a little fuel and see if it goes away. But yeah, I'm gonna get the rear tires back on it, set it back on the ground, and turn it around. I have to have access to my cherry picker to put the bed back on the rear. So I added fuel to it, and the low fuel light was still on, but that would explain it. I'm gonna go ahead and splice that back together, and hopefully that fixes it. Ta-da! Yeah, here it is, man. I'm happy with it. It looks good. Need to wash off the back of the cab. It's all dirty and stuff. But yeah, I got the bed moved inside. That's next up on the agenda. I do have to go to work tomorrow. Today's Sunday. I've been busting these past few days. I think I put in probably 20 hours, 21 hours. Been hard at it. I'll get this bed down, get it flipped up, and show you how to measure to where to cut for the notches, because it is going to go through the bed floor. Spot right there that probably going to cut out too. Didn't realize that the fender welds were that rusty, but it is what it is, man. I might just cut all that shit out, put my own wheel wells in there. But going down the rabbit hole, then I just need to get this thing back driving. Maybe I'll weld a little patch panel in there. I don't know. That's next up on the agenda. Come back out here tomorrow night. There is a little spot there that I might mess with too. I can measure for the where I'm going to cut out for the notch in the middle. Also, these nuts for my bed bolts, they fell out, so I guess I'll be welding those in. All you do is measure from here where this bed bolt goes to the front of your notch, and then come over here to the bed. So that bolt is right there, and then you just measure up and put a mark all the way across. So on this, it is center of the bolt hole. It is 21 inches. So now I will go over to the bed, find my good Sharpie. The big fat one is what I want. Here it is. I'm looking right at it. Come right here. I like it. Now I'll grab my 4-foot level, because that's all I got. Biggest one I have. Level her out. Basically just right along this that actually worked out well. I can just cut right along this, put the old cutoff wheel along it. Will guide me all the way across. Measure again just to check. And then I measured how long the notch is, and it's 16 inches from where it meets the frame in the front to where it meets the frame in the back. Measure up 16 inches. And I will cut all the way across there. I'm going to cut the bottom first, and then I'll remeasure. So I couldn't get all of these little nuts that the bed bolts go into out. I got 4 of them out though. Those 2 up there, and then the 2, one there, one there. So I figured 4 is good enough. I didn't really want to reuse the stock bed bolts anyways. They're pretty crusty and about to break in half, honestly. So I just pretty much copied that with nuts that fit these bolts. And I'll just slide this little square piece into the bed and weld it in. And then I'll also have new bed bolts for the deal. So gonna go ahead and spray some paint on the squares on the top side so they don't rust once I weld them into the bed. And after it dries, get it up in there, weld her up. And I'm also gonna make a little patch panel for that deal out of the center part that I cut out for the notch. I was in Indy one time and my fuel pump went out. So I cut a hole in the bed floor, the old redneck trick, which it worked. It allowed me to get a new fuel pump in. I made it home and been fine ever since, but now there's a big hole in the bed, so might as well fill that in as well. I did go ahead and just smooth out all the rough edges and jagged parts around where I cut out for the notch. I just hit it with a floppy disc. It's always a good idea just so you're not going through there and shank yourself with a sharp piece of sheet metal. So yeah, I will get those up in the bed. All right, they are all in. And surprisingly, I didn't get any slag in the nuts. I did mess up one bolt, but luckily I had an extra one. I ran the bolt in and then I ended up grounding it to the bolt because if you ground it to the bed, it wasn't a good enough ground to arc it. I ended up messing up that bolt, but kept the slag out of the nuts. They all ran in. I ran the nuts in right now, so I can throw a little paint on them and I don't get paint on the threads. I'll get some paint thrown on them and then finish cutting out that little spot for where I cut out for the fuel pump. And then I will test fit it on the truck. All right, I have got it back on the ground. Everything's tied up in the rear. I went ahead and got that plate welded in over there where the hole was that I cut out for the sending unit. I got a patch panel welded in right here where it was rusty. I still got to wipe this with some Duraglass. Then I'll come back and sand it and hit it with a light coat of filler. But if I'm being honest, I don't know if you can really tell. I wish I had a way to get farther away from it, but obviously the spare looks like shit. But the rear is about 1.5 inches higher than the front, which is super disappointing. I should have made them blocks taller. I figured 4.5-inch block would be enough, but apparently not. So I'm kind of debating on pulling the U-bolts back off the rear end, and it has a helper spring on the bottom. Thinking about taking that helper spring off. That should give me a good inch or so. Just don't want it too much lower in the rear than it is in the front, obviously, but I mean, it's raked now. But I'm going to get the filler wiped on this bedside, and then I have to get the front back up in the air and align it, give it a rough alignment. I'm still debating whether to do that leaf spring in the rear or not, but I probably will end up doing it. And I also still have to make a notch cover for this deal, I don't want a big hole in the bed. I'm gonna paint that either black or hit it with some bed liner along with the notch cover that I make. Let's get this notch cover made. I got it down in there. Not real happy with that or that right there. Probably going to take it back out and weld some little filler plates out here. I had to cut it in order to get it down in there. And yeah, it's kind of unfortunate, but it is what it is. It wouldn't slide down in there without cutting out that little round part at the bottom of the tub. I do want to make this removable. I'm not going to weld this in, so I'm just going to like nut insert some angle pieces and bolt it down to like the fender well, and then I might do a couple on the bed floor too, just depends. But I'm going to grind a little slot in those louvers and so it can drop down in there. That might be enough to hold it in there, I'm not sure, but it turned out all right. I'm gonna add a few more tacks to it. I added the box steel on the underside just to give it some strength. In my mind, that's gonna strengthen it up. It's got some weight to it. It's 16 gauge, which honestly I wanted like probably 14, but I didn't have any, so 16 gauge is what I used, and just welded that box steel in there to hopefully stiffen it up a little bit. But I'm happy with the actual notch cover. It's just the cutting process on the tub's got a little out of hand in order to get it down in there, like I said. But got the notch all tacked up underneath. You don't want to go putting big beads on something like this. It's so thin because you'll warp the crap out of it, like you saw in the previous clip. I had clamps on it and I was cooling it down with the air, and it still kind of warped the metal, but I was able to get it back flat with just pushing down on these and using the side pieces to straighten out the center part. But yeah, I got it all tacked up. I'm gonna go ahead and put some seam sealer on it. I don't remember what, 3M urethane seam sealer. There's obviously still a crack there since you can't weld the whole thing. So the seam sealer will seal that up. I also got the brackets on the fender wells to hold it. I just put a nut cert on the top to hold the notch cover down, and then a nut cert through the tub to hold the bracket to the tub. It's not the cleanest, but if I ever do bag it in the future, these will have to go anyways, so I'm not real concerned about getting these super straight. The holes line up in the notch cover, so that's really all I'm worried about. I did get some plates kind of welded in. They don't look great either, but it looks a little better than it did. There's not a big gap right there. I'm gonna go ahead and throw seam sealer over those two and in a few other places in the bed. Then once the seam sealer dries, I will get it all painted. I got the notch cover seam sealed, etch primed, and painted. Been up here drying for a couple hours while I've been working on other things. And those other things are, well, I changed the oil while I was up. Rewired these lights to the back. I had to cut the wires. To get the bed off, but I put a disconnect in it this time so I don't have to cut them next time. I can just disconnect them. And I also made some toe plates. I just bolted it to the bottom of the hub and then welded a piece down. I ground 2 slots in it on both sides. Run your tape measures in there. I know ideally you would want vehicle weight on it, but I figure with tow, it doesn't really matter that much. Camber, I can understand because it lifts the wheel up more and you're gonna have more negative camber when the load is on the suspension. But with tow, I don't think it matters that much. As you can see, it's about an inch towed in. But yeah, I'll get to adjusting that, and then I'm gonna mess with the camber. I did Google it and they said ideally you want 0 degrees, but more positive camber is better than having negative camber, which I don't know if it really matters that much, but a bunch either way is bad, obviously. Like half a degree or so, not really gonna matter that much, I don't think. Might wear your tires out over a long period of time, which already mine was had too much negative camber. You can see on the front tire here. I was riding on that a little bit, but yeah, I will do the toe first and get to doing the camber. I set the toe first before I messed with the camber, which was a mistake because when I maxed the camber out, I came back and checked the toe and it was about half an inch off. So I went ahead and reset that after I was done setting the camber. I got as much as I could out of those the camber plates right there. on both sides. After I maxed them out, they're not really maxed out, it's just the most that I could get out of them. I didn't really have enough leverage to really crank on the driver's side, but the driver's side has a 1/2 degree of negative camber and the passenger side has 3/4 of a degree negative camber, so I'm happy with it. After I go test drive it, I'm probably going to put a tack on each of those camber plates just so they don't move. I did notice that some of them were uneven, so I assume over time that bolt just kind of rocks in there and they pivot. So if I put a tack on them, hopefully that'll hold them. I'm not going to weld a lot on it because if I ever want to adjust it again, I don't want a massive weld to grind through. Got the notch cover in. It is final installed. Got the inner fender wells back in. I had to take those out to get to the bolts on the fender well to mount the notch cover. I'll probably put one more coat of paint on this just because there's a few places that I missed and I want it to look decent when it's in the bed. But yeah, I'm gonna go for a little test drive, then come back and tack those camber plates. Hopefully it drives good. I have this to finish. I put a coat of filler on it. It's pretty close, but I'll get to doing that. I'm gonna drive down the road with this tape on it. Might go to the gas station. Other than that, it is done. Go for a test drive. Oh yeah. All right, I made it back to the garage. Looks pretty good from this side. I need to get another center cap for the front along with another tire for the right front, which is on the list. It made it back to the garage. Nothing fell off, nothing bound up. So I call that a success. It actually turns better now. I think with the camber stood back up, it allows it to turn more freely. Yeah, I noticed that it kind of like sways a little bit more now, so I think I am going to order some sway bar end links and go ahead and throw that sway bar back on there for now. But yeah, I mean, it's not like darting or anything going down the road, just driving straight. I call that a success. I think I'm going to end this video here. I got some new sway bar end links with some new upper ball joints. I also went ahead and welded an inch on the passenger side block to get the rear end level, because I knew on full-size trucks, Chevy lean is a thing. On these mini trucks, I didn't know it was a thing. So the passenger side was an inch higher in the rear than the driver's side, so I fixed that with an inch on the bottom of the block. And I also got a set of new headlights. If you've made it this far in the video, I appreciate it. Please consider subscribing, like, and share this video. It really helps me out. Thanks for watching.